The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
If it involves, any tampering of the mail, then we definitely would have a part in that investigation.
Tonight on Politics Now, ensuring Nevada's election security, how the mail is being closely watched by federal agents. Plus,
this president hasn't done anything to get done. He's just walked away.
The I-Team sits down with Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden on his coronavirus plan.
Nevada, get your governor to open up your state.
And President Donald Trump holds a rally just over the Nevada border in Arizona. Why his campaign rallied there instead of Las Vegas.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
We are just 3 days away from Election Day. Thank you for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langler. Turnout has been big for this very unusual election. By the time all of the ballots are counted, Nevada will have passed 1 million early votes this year. Before Election Day, the turnout is already more than 53%. So here are some numbers through Thursday. So far in Nevada, more than 985,000 people have voted. 478,000 voted in person, another 500,000 by mail. Here in Clark County, more than 680,000 people have already voted. The break is split nearly down the middle, with half in person and half by mail. More than 342,000 early votes have been cast, and most of those, again, by mail. The next question, voter turnout. Across Nevada, about 45,500 more Democrats have turned in ballots than Republicans. 78,000 of those Democratic votes here in Clark County. So it may take a big Republican turnout on Election Day or a big share of independents for the GOP to win Nevada. This week was packed with visits from presidential candidates and their surrogates. On Wednesday, President Donald Trump held a rally across the Colorado River in Bullhead City, Arizona. Kristen Drummond explains why the president's trying to appeal to Nevadans from across the border.
Several thousand people coming to the Laughlin Bullhead International Airport on Wednesday. President Donald Trump coming here to pitch Nevada voters from Arizona because of the Silver State's current social gathering restrictions.
He did what he had to do to get a good-sized rally at a close enough location to Las Vegas.
Chants and cheers for President Trump as he steps off Air Force One. The commander-in-chief cross-campaigns at the airport less than a week from Election Day.
How many people are from Nevada? Not bad, not bad.
The president rallying voters across the banks of the Colorado River from Laughlin, choosing to come here because Governor Steve Sisolak continues to cap crowd capacity at 250 people. President Trump is returning to the region after violating crowd restrictions at rallies in Nevada last month, including in Henderson. But some say this venue allows supporters from around the West to see him stump on the campaign trail and avoid violations.
You get people from Arizona, Nevada, California. I've even heard about people from Idaho here, so it's a good central location.
Trump speaking more than an hour to the crowd. Topics included the economy, Second Amendment, the border wall, questioning his opponent, former Vice President Joe Biden, and COVID restrictions in Nevada.
But Nevada, get your governor to open up your state, please. Get him to open up your state.
President Donald Trump immediately left on Air Force One to attend another airport rally in Goodyear, Arizona, about 20 minutes from Phoenix. Reporting from Bullhead City, Kristen Drummond, 8 News Now.
Now, we have requested interviews one-on-one with President Trump. So far, his campaign has not made him available. Meanwhile, the I-Team's Vanessa Murphy did speak with his challenger, Joe Biden, on Zoom this week.
Nevada has been hit so hard by unemployment. What would a Biden administration do to address that, and not a promise, but an immediate action?
Well, first of all, an immediate action requires us to get the virus under control. One of the reasons why I think Nevada is being hit so hard in terms of employment is because in fact, people aren't coming to Nevada. They aren't coming to Nevada. You're not filling up your hotels. You're not the gaming industry. You're a gigantic part of your industry is hosting people from around the country, and they're not able to move. Number one. Number two, I would make sure in the meantime, immediately to deal with it, is I would make sure, were I the president, and I won't be able to do this until I'm elected if it occurs, and that is make sure that we pass into law and passed on to Nevada and the employees there exactly what the House has already passed. Unemployment insurance, rent insurance, making sure you not getting thrown out of your home or your apartment, making sure your mortgage are able to be paid. All the things that were passed by the House of Representatives, this president hasn't done anything to get done. He's just walked away. And thirdly, one of the things when I ran the Recovery Act, when we had that great recession, when we inherited from the Bush administration back when Barack and I got elected, I was able to get $88 billion out the door, but part of the 81 out the door without any waste or fraud. But one of the first things we did, we provided over $140 billion of state and local governments because they have to balance their budgets. And so what happens when they have to balance their budget, they're laying off police officers, firefighters, first responders, school teachers, and all the rest. And I would get, the House has already passed legislation to provide direct help to the state and local governments to keep people employed, to keep businesses keep businesses open, get people paid in that extra $600. All those things that Republicans are not doing, and quite frankly, Mitch McConnell used the phrase when he talked about the state of affairs in the states, he said, let them go bankrupt. So I would move what is already there, and I'd move it quickly, immediately.
The casinos and conventions support our economy, and we do see some of the casinos, some of the casino floors are busy at times right now, but our COVID numbers are going up. I'm not connecting the two, but what would you do? What would your administration's role be with the states and a state like Nevada?
First of all, I said I believe that one of the reasons why the casino floors aren't full and the hotels aren't full is because the rest of the nation is being bombarded and clobbered by COVID. We had 83,000 new cases in one day on last Friday, and then on Monday another 83,000 new cases. Deaths are piling up. We've already had 225,000 deaths. So what I would do is start to listen to the science. We paid too high a price for Donald Trump's chaotic and divisive tenure so far. Over 1,700 Nevadans have died from, and over 97,000 have been affected. Nearly 200,000 are out of job, and 98% of the culinary union members are out of work. Statewide employment, I think you got the highest or one of the second highest in the nation. It's 12-point-something%, if I'm not mistaken. And Nevada's businesses are closing. Your schools aren't back to normal because he can't focus on what matters. He's failed to pull the leaders together, hammer out a deal for working people, mom and dad and mom and pop stores to be able to stay open. Democratic House passed a bill all the way back in May that they call the HEROES Act. And so what I'd be doing is getting the money out immediately to help those businesses stay open, to be able to pay their employees, to be able to provide I'll give you one example. We can open schools, but it's going to cost about $200 billion overall for the entire United States because you got to provide the ventilation systems in the schools, you got to the sanitary systems, you got to provide for smaller classes, more teachers, you got to provide for the separation that it relates to in terms of plexiglass, all the things we can do, and where it's being done, they're able to open and people aren't getting sick.
Former Vice President and current Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden there talking to Vanessa Murphy. So the vice presidential candidates were in Nevada this week. Both of them were. Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, she was in Reno, followed by a socially distanced rally at the Doolittle Community Complex in the historic west side of Las Vegas. She was joined there by Congresswoman Susie Lee and Congressman Stephen Horsford, both of them, of course, up for re-election. Meanwhile, Vice President Mike Pence, he held a rally at Reno's airport on Thursday. The people who were there were required to sign an agreement, and the organizers had to maintain it would be limited to 250 people. The vice president was joined on stage by Congressman Mark Amodei, who is also up for re-election here in Nevada. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign and the Republican Party have filed two separate lawsuits against Clark County and state election officials. At a hearing in court on Wednesday, a judge denied the request by the plaintiffs to stop counting ballots. That lawsuit alleges signature verification scanners are set too low. A second suit requests information about election workers in Clark County, and that information includes the political affiliations of Clark County's bipartisan signature verification board. Both Lawsuits are working their way through the courts, and they're not expected, though, to stall the election. Next on Politics Now, making our election secure.
I am unaware of any credible reports of any voter fraud being committed through the mail.
A postal inspector talks to the I-Team about Election Day precautions. And fundraising for the bench. Why the district attorney in Clark County is getting involved in a race for the Nevada Supreme Court.
And I'm asking for your vote.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
One race that you've probably seen ads for is Nevada's next Supreme Court justice. It's one of more than 130 seats on the bench statewide in this election cycle, but it's also the one getting the most attention. The I-Team's David Charnes discovered one contribution raising questions about independence between prosecutors and the bench.
You've seen the ads.
I'm Judge Doug Herndon.
I'm Ozzie Fumo, and I'm running for Nevada State Supreme Court.
Assemblyman Ozzie Fumo and Clark County District Court Judge Doug Herndon vying for an open state Supreme Court seat. The I-Team found they're getting help to get there. Campaign finance reports show hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing in from lawyers and big-name law firms, even the Clark County District Attorney, some who could one day show up in front of the bench. The Nevada bar prohibits a lawyer from, quote, seeking to influence a judge by means prohibited by law. It basically prevents a lawyer from bribing a judge. But campaign donations to a judge who could one day try your case, that's perfectly legal. Both campaigns say it's not about the money, but remaining independent in the courtroom.
It's all about integrity. And if you have it, nothing else matters. And if you don't have it, nothing else matters.
You've either got the ability to be independent or you don't. And if you're going to be not independent, then you have no business being in court, period.
A 2015 report from the Brennan Center for Justice finds 63% of donations made to Supreme Court candidates nationwide comes from lawyers, lobbyists, and other business interests. In all, from small donations to the $10,000 cap, Fumo has raised $336,000 to Herndon's $776,000.
It raises questions about, at the very least, perception.
Dr. Francis Carlton is a political science professor at the College of Southern Nevada. He says the Constitution protects donations as a form of free speech.
You have one side before the judge that's given a contribution and the other side hasn't, right? That's when it can be most problematic.
So how could the campaign for Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson donate $2,500 to Herndon's campaign? Judge Herndon says the two men are longtime colleagues.
I don't think that impacts my ability to be impartial, and I don't think, look, $2,500 is a lot of money, obviously. but I don't think in the context of a campaign, it's an amount of money that would make anybody say, wow, you can't be impartial now because, that guy gave you that much money.
In a statement, Wolfson said, in part, my support is determined by my personal knowledge of the candidates' qualifications and my belief that they are the best choice to fill the position, adding nothing bars him from supporting one candidate over the other.
It becomes, in a sense, a leap of faith. That is not inaccurate to say that.
Carlton says because the law is clear, donations to judicial campaigns are legal. We simply have to put our trust in an independent court.
Once you have those, you're going to have the issue of campaign contributions.
David Sharns, 8 News Now.
On top of donations made to the candidates, political action committees, or PACs, can indirectly finance these candidates as well. Both Fumo and Judge Herndon say they're aware of at least one PAC working in their favor, pumping even more money into that race. So, with the election just days away, President Donald Trump, he is still questioning the integrity of Nevada's election. The I-Team has been digging deeper into the issue and found answers from one law enforcement agency you don't often hear about. Vanessa Murphy has that story you'll only see on 8 News Now.
President Donald Trump in Bullhead City, Arizona Wednesday continued to undermine confidence in the election process in Nevada, particularly mail-in ballots. They're an option for all active registered voters in the state during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We're a little concerned with all those ballots floating around in Nevada. Got a lot of ballots floating around in Nevada.
An issue his campaign has been pushing: voter fraud.
From your department's perspective, is voter fraud widespread through the mail?
No, as of right now, I am unaware of any credible reports of any voter fraud being committed through the mail.
And that's something Postal Inspector Trevor Hudson would look into.
If it involves, any tampering of the mail, then we definitely would have a part in that investigation.
He's part of a team in Las Vegas.
We're a federal law enforcement agency, so we carry guns, we make arrests, we serve search warrants.
It's an agency more people are becoming familiar with after its role in the arrest of former Trump advisor Steve Bannon and in the lead-up to November 3rd.
Well, one of our missions as a postal inspector is to protect the security of the mail. So that's something that we're trained to do and something that we do all the time. So that's something we'll continue to do through the election.
5 days from the election, the U.S. Attorney's Office sent 8 News Now a news release from the Department of Justice about protecting voter rights and about resources being used to investigate election fraud. Now, in addition to the postal inspector telling us there are no credible reports of voter fraud, I recently talked with the head of the FBI of Las Vegas. He also said voter fraud is not widespread. Nevada has secure voting machines, and he wants voters to feel confident. Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
If you believe you've been the victim of a postal-related crime, you can file a report. The number's on the bottom of your screen, 877-876-2455. Coming up next on Politics Now, when will we get results?
Election day is 1 week away. I'm Alexandra Limon, and coming up, I'll tell you why some election officials say a delay in the results isn't necessary.
local election headquarters. You're watching Politics Now.
Amy Coney Barrett sworn in as the 115th Supreme Court Justice earlier this week. She is the 5th woman on the High Court. The White House ceremony was just moments after the Senate confirmed Judge Barrett 52-48 on Monday. The Senate has now adjourned until after the election. Across the country, record turnout is expected this election day. Many states like Nevada have expanded mail or early voting. Nevada changed the law this year to start counting 15 days before Election Day. But that's not the case in other states like Michigan.
We're trying to manage expectations now to say when the system works, when people are counting ballots effectively and efficiently and carefully and accurately, that takes time. It can't be done instantly.
Let's start by talking about what Election Day, what it's going to look like. How long will we have to wait to see the ultimate results?
Yeah, and that's the big unknown. We have, though, been talking to election officials in states around the country, and the message that they basically have is that they want the public to be prepared to have to wait perhaps a few days, perhaps a few weeks. We really don't know. And there are a couple of issues at play. One of them is that we are already seeing record numbers of people vote either by mail or early in person in states that allow that. So there's already a larger volume. The other issue is the vote by mail. The thing is that some states, they're allowed to pre-process all of these ballots that they're getting in the mail. Here in Virginia, for example, election officials told me they can run the ballots as they get them, and then on election night, all they do is essentially push a button to get the tally to that point. But other states, they're not allowed to do that at all. They cannot begin any type of pre-processing until election day or maybe the day before. So that's something that election officials in Michigan, for example, are really concerned about, and it could take them days, perhaps weeks, to catch up and count all of those ballots that they got ahead of time.
What concerns are there on Capitol Hill about the role, and other people involved in the election, the concern of the role they're going to play after Election Day?
We've kind of focused a lot on the messaging on social media leading up to the election and whether or not there's political bias on these platforms. That's been a huge, issue here that lawmakers have focused on Capitol Hill. But it was really interesting because this week there was a hearing in the Senate with the CEOs of Twitter, Alphabet, which is Google, and Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg actually said that in the days after the election, Facebook will actually be flagging any candidates or any posts that claim victory in any races that have not actually been decided. And he said that the way that will happen is that the flag will have an attachment and maybe some sort of link that explains that actually this race is still ongoing, it's not been completed, states are still counting.
That was our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Alexandra Limon. So for results here in Nevada, we started counting 15 days early, but ballots still have to be postmarked by November 3rd. And then election officials will have to wait up to 7 days for the mail-in ballots to actually arrive, again, depending on when they've been postmarked. So final certified results will come about a week after the election. However, you still may know who won many of the races on election night, depending on how big the gap is and how much of a vote we get on Election Eve. The question is, though, are you ready for Election Day? We're going to tell you about some of the coverage plans and when you might expect all the results
trusted leadership comes home.
Well, what we're keeping an eye on next week, have you heard? It's Election Day. First, we do want to remind you there is same-day registration available in Nevada, and also you do not have to go to a specific polling place this year. If you are voting in person, just head to the one that's closest to you, the polling location. We're going to have team coverage at the polls on Election Day here on 8 News Now and, of course, at 8newsnow.com. We're also going to have election experts joining us. Steve Sebelius from the RJ, he's going to join us for our coverage, and we'll bring you candidates who are involved in the election via Zoom all throughout Election Day. We start on air at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, on Tuesday rather, from 4 to 7, and after that we're going to give up-to-the-minute updates online and on television every half hour. We have an 8 o'clock results special on our digital platforms and a wrap-up program at 11 o'clock on election night. If you're still unsure about a few races and you haven't voted yet, or if you want to see a candidate's position on a certain issue, don't forget to check out our 2020 election interviews section at 8newsnow.com. We have all of the interviews that we have done with the candidates and the top campaign officials in all the major races, and political analysts as well. It's all in one easy spot. Just check it out. We've got the presidential and the congressional candidates as well. Just look for the tab under News for everything you need to know. Please make sure you vote. We'll have a complete recap of Election Day on Politics Now next week. Have a good rest of the week.